because we know that um, having a job is linear and working a 9 to 5 is linear. We also know that everything we put up onto our plate up to this point in life is not linear. You have one job, you have multiple expenses that you owe to your debt collector. And so because of that, it it becomes very hard, right? All you need is one house, you know what I mean? You owe that debt to that house, right? Well, you can say, well, I'm saving, or I'm building my equity. Yeah, that makes sense. That's okay. You can think that way, but you still, you know what I mean? Your money is still tied up, right? When you lose your job, that's when you know. Does that make sense? When you lose your job, that's when you know that you should have been doing other things. You know what I mean? Okay, so what we need to talk about in lesson two is management, right? You have to get it into your head that you have to manage all of your situations. Okay, not just a singular situation, right? Most of you guys think like, hey, look, I clear all my debt and I can start saving. That's linear. That's a linear way of thinking, right? When you have one job but you have like 5 credit cards, yeah, that's like it's never gonna happen. Okay, so now you have to manage every situation, every account, every credit card is an account, every situation is an account. You have to manage every account, right? That's how you gotta think about it, right? That's why they give you a minimum payment, right? If you can pay the minimum, we'll let you slide. You know what I mean? But mind you, the interest doesn't stop, right? So this is where you have to do management, right? You have to pay into the interest and pay into the principal, right? If you can't do that, then you know, go ahead and defer your credit card. Wait a few years. It takes about 7 years for the credit um, system, uh, you know, to not see it as a um, what do you call that? Uh, Derogatory, right? But yeah, let's talk about management, right? What do you need to do to manage, right? So recognize that you do have to manage every situation individually, right? You know what I mean? At the very least, the least you can do is pay the minimal, and then somewhere in between pay into the principal, right? So at least what I mean, like you can say, hey, look, let's shorten my days on this a little bit, not a lot, just a little bit, right? You have to put that into practice. You have to put it into motion, right? Once you're able to put it into motion, then you're you can begin to see what progression is, like what your capabilities are, right? If you don't put it into motion and you keep going the same rate that you're going, thinking that hey, look, everyone owes a credit debt, right? Then you're that person. You know what I mean? That's never grown up. You know what I mean? To take care of his or her responsibilities, right? All you know how to do is spend. You don't know how to save. You don't know how to manage your situation, right? And no one's gonna give you lending power or borrowing power. You know what I mean? And that's exactly what it is borrowing power, right? Now, that's lesson two. It's called management, right? Um, so you got to start thinking about it that way. So to reprogram your brain, right? Lesson one was to recognize that you do not have a linear situation issue by um, having financial issues, right? And lesson two is management. Just recognize that you have to manage every account, right? Knowing that it's a multi-dimensional problem, and you need to isolate and manage every situation, right? That's lesson two. So go ahead and take it with a grain of salt. Take a breather. I'll come back in the next few days and give you lesson three, right? And it only gets better, right? Not worse, it gets better. It's very simple. You know what I mean? Like I don't know. I think people think they have it right, but they don't have it right. Trust me. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't matter how long it takes you to do it, just as long as you know that eventually you'll be able to do it, right? You can see light at the end of the tunnel. I think most people can't even see light at the end of the tunnel, right? They just live day to day, right? Thinking that one day it'll go away, or maybe they'll pass away before they have to deal with it, right? But I don't know. I don't know. I don't have kids, right? So I wouldn't know where my debt will go to, right? But what I've heard is that if you have debt, the debt will be passed on to your kids. You know what I mean? So you're gonna give them that that a farewell a farewell gift before you leave this planet. Anyway, it's just my 2 cents for the day, guys. Have a good night. Peace.